Hello and welcome to Friday Live. I'm Craig Harmann of Harmanny Music Education. I'm trying to figure all of this out, so bear with me if I'm kind of looking around a little bit, and if this is even actually working. I'm double checking to make sure that things are doing what they're supposed to do. On one thing it's showing that it's working, on the other I'm not sure if it is or not. So we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. It's showing that it's working. Anyway, today I'm going to talk about practicing. And if you've got any questions, you can go ahead and throw those in the chat. Otherwise, I've got a few things in mind to kind of dive into and talk about. It's been something that's been on my mind for a while. Last Friday's video, I talked about practicing, because that's kind of an important thing. And I've had conversations with students throughout the years, and I've taught for 22 years. I've had conversations with students about practicing and why it's beneficial. And I've had students that have come to lessons without practicing. I've had parents that call lesson time practice. It's not that at all. The idea is, and I've learned how to explain this to parents, that, well, the lesson is time to review what's been learned and learn new things and go forward from there. Not to practice. You're supposed to spend that time during the week working on the different things, the techniques, the ideas covered in the lesson, to then be able to come back at the next lesson and show what you've learned and learn new things and continue the cycle again and again. But what happens if you don't practice? Well, you're going to see very, very, very limited growth. And I've struggled to understand why parents have such a hard understanding of this, because, you think about it, and I talked about it a little bit in last Friday's video, that if you have your child signed up for, let's say, a basketball team, and you're paying money for them to be on this team, you're probably going to purchase, if you haven't already, a basketball hoop and have it in your driveway. You're probably going to buy them a basketball. I mean, that kind of makes sense, right? And so they're going to be practicing. They're going to be shooting at the basket outside of when it's time for their team workout, which you could kind of equate lessons to that as well, even though you may just be individually one-on-one with your teacher. As you're doing this, one of the things that is really important, because the whole thing is repetition makes things work like it's supposed to, right? When we repeat things over and over, whether it's school, whether it's habits in life, whatever the case is, the more we do it, the more we get ingrained, right? Things like learning how to brush your teeth as a child, learning how to tie your shoes, learning how to walk, all these things, right? You don't have to think about, oh, I must pick up my left foot now and put it down, and now I must pick up my right foot. No, we just do it. The more you can do that when it comes to music, when you practice, when you're working on things, that's the idea, and that's how you improve. But the other flip side of this is, how do you practice? Because I've also had conversations with parents that are, well, I have Bobby or Susie play the song 10 times in a row. Good. Okay. That's great. Are they doing it without any mistakes? Are they slowing down? Are they playing with expression? All of these things. If they're not, guess what's happening? Yeah. You're ingraining that not so sure things, the confidence, lack of confidence. You're ingraining those incorrect notes in how you're playing the song. See, the saying goes, practice makes perfect, but that's not true, honestly. I mean, it'd be great if it did, but practice makes better. That's what it is. And good practice makes much better. The thing about it is, if you're running into, and this is what I do with my students, if you're running into a spot where you're having trouble, start there. don't start all the way back at the beginning if it's in the middle of the piece that you're having trouble. Focus on that spot. Take it apart. Go slow. That's going to help you really focus in, really bear down on that one spot so that it's confident and accurate. This is the thing of practice. You can spend 20 minutes practicing and get absolutely nothing accomplished. You can also spend 20 minutes practicing and actually learn a piece of music and do it well. It all depends on how you practice. One of the things that I encourage my students to do is they're first working on a piece, whether they're just beginners or they're more advanced students, is for piano, I encourage them to take hands apart. See, playing the piano is hard because you're using your right hand and your left hand at the same time, and many times doing independent things. And that's not how our hands work. Because for most of us, well, most all of us really, we have one hand that's more dominant than the other. Those of you who are right-handed, that would be this hand. For people like me who are left-handed, it's usually this hand, right? For me, I've been playing piano since I was 5 years old, so I'm pretty comfortable with either hand. However, the non-dominant hand is the one that's going to need probably a little bit more attention. And you might have also noticed that if you're trying to move your fourth finger without moving your pinky, it's pretty hard. And even trying to move your pinky without moving your fourth finger. Because these two fingers are actually connected with the same tendon to move. So these three are far more independent fingers to use. That's not to say that you can't not use them. You need to use these two, your fourth and fifth fingers. But it's going to take a little bit of extra work and a little extra focus to build up the dexterity for these fingers to make them a little bit more manageable. And so taking it apart makes it easier to focus. I also encourage students to take things in bite-sized chunks, maybe working on 2 measures at a time, or maybe 4, a line of music in many cases. Working on that independently, and really, the big word I have to remind my students of again and again and again, and I'm talking to myself too, is to go slow. A lot of times, especially on songs that we know how it's supposed to sound, we know how it's supposed to go, we want to play it that fast. Ain't gonna happen. More often than not, it's not gonna happen, because what happens is our fingers haven't ever done this before, haven't played these rhythms, haven't played these notes, whatever the case may be, and trying to keep up that connection between your brain and your fingers is, well, gonna lead to disaster. Then it's gonna lead to you being frustrated. You may throw things, you may bang on the piano, and it's not a pretty sight. Believe me, I've done it. So when you go slow and you take it apart in little chunks, this makes it easier and more manageable to really attack the piece of music. Because the way that I frame this for my students is, music is a language. And I'm probably going to do a YouTube video on this too, just because I think it's really, really amazing to think about it. Music is a language, and we as musicians are interpreters of that language. You see, I know a little bit of French. I know a little bit of Spanish, not much. And if I were to go to France or Spain or even Mexico to try to speak Spanish or French, I can't keep up. I may be able to use my two or three words that I know, but that's not going to get me very far. But knowing that language and taking that language and interpreting it, right? So I'm going to need somebody to be in that in-between state to tell me, what is this person saying? What does this sign mean? And then taking what I say and explaining that to the other person that I'm talking to. That's what's needed. Well, music's the same way. All of the notes, the rhythms, the dynamics, the articulations, all of those things are written out on the page in the language of music. The only way that that happens is when musicians actually interpret it and make it come to life. And so how do we do that? Well, we have to look at and investigate the music. And so first things first, before you do anything else of hands apart, taking it apart in chunks, going slow, those are all good strategies and good techniques. But the first thing to do, and this is the first thing I do with students, is use your eyes. Look at the music. Look it over. Look for things that are similar. Look for patterns that repeat. I think my students get sick of me saying this over and over and over again. Look for repeated patterns. Repeated patterns are all over the place in music, whether it's repeated rhythm patterns, repeated note patterns, repeated note and rhythm patterns, which would be identical, right? Example would be, are you sleeping, right? Are you sleeping? Are you sleeping? It's the same thing again. Brother John, same thing again, right? This is the thing that happens, maybe not that specifically, but it happens in music where we have those ideas repeated, or it could be the same rhythm over again. This is the thing about practicing, is it's work. It is. There's just no easy way around it. Practice is work. Just like you have to practice to be able to play a sport. You have to practice to be good at math, to do well in school. All these things really work together to make this understanding happen. And it's the same way with music. So when we're practicing, there's plenty of strategies you can learn and come up with. But the biggest thing is figuring out what works for you. I always encourage students to start with getting that visual on what's there in the music. What's the dynamic marking? Is it a fast song? Is it a slow song? Finished product. Whatever the dynamic marking is, I'm sorry, not dynamic, tempo marking, sorry. Whatever the dynamic tempo marking, golly, whatever the tempo marking is, that is telling you what the finished product will be. So if it says allegro, that means fast. That means once you know it, you play it fast. You don't start practicing it at a fast speed. That's the idea. Is you start slow, you start steady. Because that's one of the most important skills as a musician, is to have a steady beat. Now, I can talk about some of the other instruments I teach. You see over that shoulder, my right shoulder. I have a couple guitars hanging up on the wall. I teach guitar as well. This idea of slow and steady, same thing for guitar. But what you can also do is work on your left hand to figure out what the chord position is. These things can be worked out individually. It's the same idea like with piano of left hand, right hand by itself. Right hand, you're working on your strum pattern. Sure. Same idea. I also play trumpet and teach trumpet lessons. To play the trumpet, obviously breath is the most important thing because, well, you have to have that. And then working on, just working on buzzing your lips without the mouthpiece, with the mouthpiece, with the instrument, working on holding out those tones. Rhythm is such an important thing, whatever instrument you're playing. And a lot of times, what I found to be the easiest way to figure out rhythm is not only counting it, and writing in some countings, writing in your music's a good thing too, but writing in those countings, but also clapping or tapping the rhythm, because it's giving you that physical gesture, right? That physical motion of clap or tapping the rhythm. Those things work to be able to do that. But then if you throw in if you're counting a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, now all of a sudden it's getting that feel. When you go to the instrument, then it's a lot easier to do that. These are ideas that work really well outside of, really for whatever instrument you're using, but it works well outside of even just sitting down and hammering away at the music. Because one of the things that happens, like I said before, practicing is work, and work can be frustrating. It can. I know this from experience. Been playing the piano. I've been doing music for 41 years of my life. I've had my moments of frustration. Believe me, that piano over my shoulder, that's been my piano since I was in 3rd grade. It was my grandparents' piano, and they passed it along to me. That piano right there has seen and felt a lot of frustration from me. I've not always been the kindest to it because I was frustrated, and I banged on the keys because I was mad. Not my most proud moments, I will tell you that. But the thing about it is that when you're frustrated, you're probably going to have a lot more difficulty in learning. So what I want to do is I want to help my students, and I want to help anyone who's learning music to not be frustrated, or at least to minimize the frustration. And so these steps of practicing slow, working on each hand individually, working on rhythms, working on specific spots, help so much to minimize the frustration. Frustration is still going to be there. That's just the reality of it, because it is a challenge. Whether you're playing the piano, whether you're playing a guitar, trumpet, whatever the case is. I'm also going to spend a little bit of time diving into singing, because I think, this is just my opinion, but I'm the one doing the stream, so my opinion works. But the thing is this. I think singing is probably one of the hardest instruments to do. And yes, the voice, singing, is a musical instrument. I do this with my voice students, and they look at me like, what? Yeah, you are a wind instrument, because you require air to make sound. See, the thing is, every other musical instrument can be physically manipulated to make sound. I can press down on a key, knowing where that key is, and the piano is going to play the sound. Each string on the guitar makes a specific sound. On my trumpet, if I hold down a valve and I move my embouchure, move my lips, I can adjust to be able to make the sound. Any other musical instrument, trombone, you adjust the slide. Clarinet, you whatever finger it is that you hold down. With the voice, however, how are you adjusting? You're using your ear. I was actually just this morning working with a student. I was asked to work with a student who was struggling to match pitch. And one of the things that she was having trouble with was, I was playing a note on the piano trying to say, hey, sing this note. And she was close, but not quite there. And so I asked her, I said, so how long have you been in choir? Just this year. Okay. Have you had any other musical background? She said, no. I said, okay. So I said, what music do you listen to? And she told me Doja Cat, Taylor Swift, the typical 13-year-old girl things that they listen to, right? And I said, okay, that's good. I said, sing along with those as much as you can, because the more you sing, the more you're practicing and reinforcing outside of choir. But one of the things I was working with her to do was to try to get her voice a little bit higher. Because the thing about singing is, you have to magically hear that pitch and pick it out of the air to sing it, right? And she was doing a great job of, as the notes were going up and down, her voice was going up and down, which was good. That's a positive thing. But it was working with her to get her on those higher notes to start with, or at least getting her voice up a little higher. So finally I resorted to one of the tools in my toolbox of having her talk like Mickey Mouse. And it worked, because then she was talking a little bit higher when she was normally talking in a little lower pitch. And it got her up a little bit. And I said, okay, now just pick something out of the air. I said, of course, the Mickey Mouse voice. I won't do it again for your sake. But she did, and she was able to pick out a pitch. And I said, great. Here's the problem. You have to keep working at it, because it's not something that's magically going to be fixed. It just isn't. That's the thing with singing, is it's so much habit. But the best thing about singing is we're using that mechanism all the time. It's not like I have to be sitting down at the piano to practice. We're reinforcing what we're doing when we sing every day, every moment, as we're breathing, as we're talking, because we're using the same mechanisms. See, I love The Music Man, and I love the line from the musical The Music Man, which says, singing is nothing more than sustained talking. We talk on different pitches. Some of us talk high, some of us talk low. And the idea is you just hold that out and all of a sudden it's a song. Well, of course, there's a lot more work to it than that. But the reinforcement of it comes when we're talking. It comes when we're breathing, to make sure we get that full breath. And then as we're talking, to make sure that our breath is supported as well. The other thing that happens is we're around music. We're surrounded by music. That's why I asked her who her favorite singers were, because I kind of guessed, being a 13-year-old girl, she listens to music. It happens. I have 2 daughters, so I know this happens. The idea is you're going to be surrounded by it, so listen to it, sing with it, record yourself singing with it to follow up and say, how close was I to the notes? Was I doing it right? That's the best thing that you can do. The great thing about whatever musical instrument is, whether you're singing, whether you're playing piano, trumpet, guitar, saxophone, whatever it is, accordion even, is that the more you work at it, the more you spend time with it, the more comfortable you're going to get with the instrument, the more confidence you're going to get with it, and the better your overall sound is going to become. See, and I'm going to finish with this. I have lots of parents ask me, so how long should my child practice? And my response almost immediately is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Most of them get it, but I will sometimes get some confused looks. Wait, what? Yeah. That would be optimal to practice every minute of every day. As you can tell, I'm not. I'm actually doing a YouTube video right now. So that doesn't work. But that's not realistic because we have to sleep. We have other activities. We have things that we need to do. So how much should you practice? Well, as much as you can. I tell students 5 minutes a day is better than 0 minutes a day. 10 minutes a day is better than 5 minutes a day. 15 is better than 10, and you can keep going from there. But the idea is the more you practice, the better you're going to be. If you spend only 10 minutes a week practicing, you're probably going to sound like you have practiced 10 minutes a week. If you practice 2 hours a week, or 3 hours a week, or 7 hours a week, there's going to be a difference in sound. A significant difference in sound. But again, it goes back to what I said at the start. If you're using the time effectively, you can be sitting at the piano practicing for an hour a day, but if you're just going over the music again and again and again with the mistakes that you're making, you're not being confident in what you're doing. You're not being musical in what you're doing. So, let's get to practicing. Join me every Friday at 1 p.m. Central. I will be on live for about 20 to 30 minutes as long as technology allows, and hopefully this technology worked so that you will be able to see me live and pose some questions so that we can have some fun interactions. Thank you for watching, and